You're listening to episode 99 of Bionic Planet. I recorded this episode in Mombasa, Kenya, where today's guests are helping people revive the coastal mangrove forests that protect this seaside city and support its fishing sector. As my physician can attest, helping people often starts with persuading them, and persuading, and persuading, and persuading.
So you might try to create awareness to a certain community and it's not buying your idea, but you do not lose hope because you know your main end goal. You want to protect that ecosystem. So you keep on pushing and pushing until it comes into their senses and they get to realize they need to conserve.
Lucien Adiambo serves on the crew of Mombasa's Big Ship, which is a community-based organization, or CBO, that's been working to save mangroves for 15 years. But they've been unable to access carbon finance to do so, for reasons we'll get into over the course of the show. They've turned instead to a blend of old and innovative financing mechanisms that leverage the high visibility of these critical ecosystems.
Man may be unwittingly changing the world's climate through the waste products of his civilization.
There's a group of us now who are proposing that the Earth has actually entered a new epoch, and that is the Anthropocene.
We know that the enemy is carbon, and we know its ugly face. We should put a big fat price on it, and of course, add to that, drop the subsidies.
Mangroves are forests that grow along the coast, half in the water and half on land, that they create by pulling carbon from the air and infusing it into the ocean floor, which rises as they migrate out to sea. Mangroves shield the coast from storms and erosion, provide habitat for baby fish, and pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere at a rate about 10 times higher per hectare than terrestrial forests do. They occupy slivers of land around the world, but support massive communities of fish, shrimp, and coral reefs, which in turn support fishermen and the tourist trade, even as those same fishermen and hoteliers chop the mangroves for timber and firewood or clear them for beaches. We've covered mangroves intermittently on Bionic Planet, but the most detailed treatment is in episode 61, entitled Seaweed, Cities, and Mangroves, The Blue Carbon Story. One of the world's leading authorities on mangrove restoration is a guy named James Cairo, and I was on my way to visit Cairo at his headquarters in Gazi Bay, which is about 35 kilometers south of Mombasa, when I dropped in on Big Ship to speak with Bosco Juma, who founded Big Ship in 2009. Big Ship is one of several community-based organizations, or CBOs, working to revive the mangroves of Tudor Creek, which is one of the water bodies that separate the island of Mombasa from mainland Kenya. The mangroves of Tudor Creek have been protecting the coast for thousands of years, but human activities destroyed or degraded 80% of them in the last century, leaving the city of 1 million people dangerously susceptible to the ocean. Bosco's initial idea was to encourage sustainable mangrove farming, to get people to replant degraded mangroves and then to harvest them conservatively so that the net impact over time was positive. But he quickly realized that the cost of even conservative harvesting, in terms of reduced protection, increased erosion, and plummeting fish stocks, not to mention climate impacts, dwarfed any income that people could get from timber sales. So he shifted to a slew of new strategies that we'll hear about today. Big Ship sparked restoration through an adopt-a-site fundraising model, and they ensure long-term viability by building up beekeeping, ecotourism, and other activities while linking mangrove health to fish stocks. Before we start, I should point out that I conducted the interview on the roof of the building where Big Ship has its offices, and it got kind of windy up there at times, so it sometimes sounds like I'm rubbing the microphone against sandpaper, and you'll also hear occasional goats, chickens, and children in the background.
I'm Bosco John Juma. I'm a conservationist and also a career mentor and a social entrepreneur. Also, I'm the executive director and founder of Big Ship Organization.
My name is Lucien Adiambo. I am a marine resource manager, management student, and currently working at Big Ship as the urban resilience and livelihoods officer.
My name is Susan Akinyi. I work here at Big Ship as the head of programs. I'm also a marine scientist, and I'm also an environmentalist.
I've been born, raised here in this village. I went to school right here. You see that tree there? There's where this tree.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's where I went for my elementary schools.
Okay.
And then my high school, just the bridge when you are connecting to this junction.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in campus, I was just here at the Task Mombasa campus, Nairobi University.
Okay.
And I work here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I live, work here.
You live in the shadow of where you grew. And you too? Can you also see your
Yeah,
village?
I grew up here. I studied around here, but for upscaling level, I went to Nairobi.
Okay.
Yes.
And?
I was not born and raised in Mombasa.
Okay, you're the outsider.
I'm the outsider. Yeah, but I studied my high school levels in Mombasa and university also in Mombasa.
Can you maybe give us your elevator pitch on what Big Ship does?
Okay, so Big Ship is a community-based organization that was started in the year 2009 and registered as a CBO in 2013. And it focuses on 4 thematic areas. We have our conservation, and then we have urban livelihood, we have waste management, and we have child protection and sponsorship. Yeah, so under our conservation docket, we have a model that is called Adopt a Site model, which we use to engage and partner with other organizations in terms of restoring the mangrove ecosystem in Chuda. And for urban livelihood, we train communities, and we call them community scouts, who we engage in beekeeping practices. And also we have a program that is called VIMP. That is VIMP. It is volunteership, internship, mentorship program.
Okay.
Where we engage the youths from different parts of the country in terms of career mentorship, entrepreneurships, the skills that they can get to prepare them for their career pathways when they go outside for jobs. And also we have a program that just recently finished where we focus on training green champions in matters of environmental conservation and also waste management, where we have succeeded in that program. It's called Mikoko Endelevu, meaning the sustainability of mangroves. As much as we are focusing on mangrove conservation, we are looking at what's next after restoration and conservation. Yeah, so we are trying to tap into new areas. And also we have a program that focuses on ecotourism. We want to venture into that. And with this, we are all trying to create alternative livelihoods for this community to be able to benefit from the mangrove ecosystem rather than overutilize the resources and also decrease the overdependency they have within the ecosystem. For child protection and sponsorship, we have partnered with World Vision. And with this, we are able to monitor the kids that are very vulnerable families and offer support where we can. And through that monitoring, we are able to keep records of the families that are living within this area. We are able to give support where we can, yes.
That's a lot to unpack. And these are all social programs you're describing, but the objective, as I perceive it, really is the mangroves, right? That's what unites all of you, is protecting the mangroves, kind of reducing deforestation in the mangroves by reducing poverty, helping people, right? Yeah. And you also mentioned entrepreneurship in there. And that seems to be the common theme, is that it's all about trying to help people understand how they can develop sustainable livelihoods and how they can live with the mangroves rather than against them.
Yes. And that's why I mentioned the Mikoko Endelevu. It's a training program, which we want the youths also to be involved in these programs, because most of the programs that are out there, the youths are not really engaged. And our main focus, as I mentioned, is that we are a youth-led organization. And we want as much as possible that the youths of the next generation and the other generation also to get and understand what it means when you talk about environmental conservation. Does it mean only you plant a tree and then you leave it there? But you have to do a follow-up in terms of ensuring that this tree is able to give you something back in return. Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been involved in this?
Personally, I joined Big Ship last year.
Okay.
Yeah, but Big Ship has been in operation for the past 14 years. Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been active in marine conservation or in this field?
For Big Ship, 14 years, I can say.
For
Me
yeah.
personally, now this will be like my fifth year. Yeah. Because I did my bachelor's in marine resource management and then my master's in fisheries and aquaculture. So I've interacted mostly with the marine resources, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned it's adopt a
site.
Adopt a site.
Yes.
And how does that work?
So basically how adopt a site works is we first of all do an assessment in the mangrove ecosystem. We send out officers to go and do an assessment of the degraded areas. Once we have identified and done assessment of the degraded areas, we engage the communities and we look for collaborations with the community. We inform them and we create awareness in that we tell them a particular area has been degraded and we'd like that you partner with us so that when we do restoration, you are the ones who are going to be participating in this restoration activity and you will be able to protect it as much as also we are collaborating also with the Kenya Forest Service in that. So once we have done assessment, community collaboration, and then we now do partnership with other organizations. We deal with the government institutions, non-government institutions, corporates, shipping institutions, and then after partnership, now we restore that area. After restoration, we do investment. So investment is where now a partner or an organization has adopted a site. We have restored that area. The tree have grown to maturity. Now what's next? You have an area, we can invest in beekeeping, we can invest in carbon credit. Those are just a few that we have open.
So that I do a rejoinder from what my colleague has just mentioned, mentioning of the investment part, because there is where the rubber meets the road. Now from the adopter site, upon doing restoration, which restoration is now the act of rehabilitating the mapped degraded site, in the assessment on the community, we look at the socioeconomic aspects, which can really facilitate sustainable development. As we had said, there is like the beekeeping, there is the tourism, which we have now mentioned, there is the waste management, and that list depends on what is the socioeconomic dynamic of that community which you have partnered with. Yeah, so upon getting that, then the investment part is on those areas that have been found viable in that specific area. So that's how the connection of investment and the uniqueness to it.
Who are the investors?
The investors are the partners who adopted sites.
Like corporate?
Even individual.
Okay.
Yeah, and even groups. We have some group of professionals in health and safety who like the idea and they gathered themselves and they said, we want to walk this journey. So it cuts across, and investment doesn't have to be big financing. It could be buying one beehive because you planted 10 trees, and that fits in the viable product that we are already trying to invest in.
Someone who buys a beehive, are they buying that to be philanthropic, to give it to the community, or to be invested in the area? I guess I'm going to have a disconnect. I'm not sure on where. Yeah.
It's not really about being philanthropic, but just being reality, true, to be alive to the fact that conservation is a process. That's why they adopt a site. If you adopt a child, you'll want to know if he's going to school, where he is, if he's sick, and that's what it means. So if you have to invest to that child, then investing to the sustainability of the tree could be as little as that. So that, because this we are coming from the narrative of people who are planting trees and then taking photos as CSR and going away.
Right. That's where I was going was tree planting things are everywhere. And to me, if you're doing tree planting within a carbon program, you have verification, validation, you make sure that there's ongoing monitoring. But there's all these people popping up saying, we're going to plant 2 trees, and no one knows if they're there 2 or 3 years from now. You guys are somehow encouraging long-term investment in this so that the trees aren't just planted and left. I'm trying to figure out how you're able to ensure that.
Yeah, because we are very deliberate on that from the onset, because the narrative, even when they're coming, they don't have that expectation. Yeah, so we always ensure, we even offer training to them before the planting. We go to their boardroom, we orient their staff about the wetland and all that, and what that planting means. So that way it brings the commitment, because adopt a site we use technology to ensure that the site we're talking about is quantifiable. It can be as small as the size of this room.
Okay.
Yeah, you can live here today with your site.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and later on say, because I have a square meter of a site, I'm sending a beehive knowing that it is equivalent. So it is that.
Okay, for the investment part, our major focus is usually to support the local communities. So even if an investor comes, the main aim is to literally support the community. So what we usually do is we identify community groups. We train them based on the social dynamics that exist. For instance, when it comes to unemployment issues, we will want to create alternative sources to provide employment. So we can identify community groups, we map them, and then train them on either beekeeping, ecotourism programs, and carbon offsetting. So once we have trained them, they are able to now venture into a certain program. For instance, so far we have trained like 5 community groups who are now currently venturing in beekeeping. We provide the equipment, the beekeeping gears, and every other thing. So what we only do is to train the community. We equip them with the materials, and then they are shown on how to invest on beekeeping. Yeah.
What are you studying?
I'm studying marine resource management.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Currently in my 4th year of study. Yeah. So you may wonder why I am working and I am a student at the same time. So I joined Big Ship, that is during 2022, for my attachment periods. That was for 3 months. And then my experience here fascinated me to continue giving back to the society, because literally Big Ship is focused on community empowerment. So I was really interested in ensuring a community is empowered. And so that is why I continued supporting the organization up to date. Yes.
And growing up in this area, you must have seen lots of changes in the mangroves around here.
Yeah.
How has the attitude towards mangroves in general changed over the past 20 years or so, as far back as you can remember?
Okay, what I may say is previously the community didn't know what mangroves were. It was just like a forest existing somewhere. And Mombasa, you realize it's a peri-urban setting. So no one had that idea of understanding this ecosystem, what it does, how is it helpful to this urban setup. But with time, as people have ventured into the marine space and a lot of awareness has been created, you realize now that the communities have literally understood the importance of conserving these mangroves, and they are actually championing towards supporting the organization in the restoration activities.
And how did you come to appreciate the value of mangroves?
My own evolution. Okay, as I mentioned, I studied marine science. Personally, I didn't know about mangroves. Growing up in this area, I was one of the people who didn't know about mangroves. But as I studied, I got to realize the potential that mangroves have and the critical roles that they play. For instance, in carbon offsetting, you realize they really play a critical role in carbon sequestration. And since Mombasa is a peri-urban setup, you realize there are so many industries all over emitting a lot of greenhouse gases. And without the mangroves, then this would be another setup somewhere. Maybe the quality of life could have depreciated. So that is why I came to understand the value of mangrove and the fact that they also play a critical role in protecting the adjacent communities when it comes to natural calamities. So assuming these mangroves were not there and we are surrounded by an ocean, then what could be the situation? Maybe we could be flooded all over. Maybe Mombasa couldn't be existing. So you again come to realize the critical role that mangroves play. And that is how I came to value the importance and appreciated the need to venture into this program and support the organization in conserving.
You were a product of the VIM program as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
First of all, our VIM program stands for Volunteership, Internship, and Mentorship Program. So this is a program that Big Ship initiated to help young careers or young generation to be able to establish themselves and identify their career path. So what it entails is you are taken through a journey of self-discovery, where you're able to discover yourself from right where you're born to who you are as a person, to what you aim to achieve as a person, and where you are heading to. And that is now defines your career path. And then you're able to be taken through a process of identifying your skills analysis, where you get a process of internalizing yourself, and from there you are able to identify the kind of skills that you possess as a person. And then by you identifying your skills, then you are able to be taken through a process of career development where you are taken through stages of career plan, and you're able to initiate developing a plan up to a point of making it into a document where you can easily follow up, ensuring you reach your career.
Okay. And what did you find out about yourself in this?
Okay, as I went through the program, I realized apart from just being the scientist or just tapping into the scientific knowledge, then there's that aspect of me wanting to focus more into the community. And that is how I derive that as being part of my future career, to ensure I use my scientific knowledge to support the larger community and just have one or two people getting to speak about the impact I have created from my process or my works.
You mentioned a couple of different income sources. You talked about ecotourism.
Yes.
You referenced carbon offsetting, but you don't use carbon finance. If I understand right, you were talking more about the fact that it does offset, but you weren't talking about carbon finance. How have you managed to do this without carbon finance? So many other organizations are saying we can't get by without it. How did you manage to keep this going, and is it enough? Do you think you'll need carbon finance in the future?
Now that my colleague mentioned the value of mangrove towards sequestration, and how much the community can also plug in carbon as part of the product that they are valuing, why are we not into it? I think that's a straight answer, isn't it? Yeah, we're not to it because we are still looking at the processes into it and trying to understand its efficacy altogether. But what we are appreciating is the fact that it also brings income to the valuation of mangrove, because that's another valuation that was not tapped. Yeah, so we need to appreciate that fact, but now come back and to look at the processes part of it. Yes, so we are still like the sluggards into it. Yeah, but what we are appreciating, what you have said, is the data set that carbon brings, and that's what we are endeavoring as an organization to ensure I put up to the standards with our partners, because we have commitments to our small partners like you. If you do get that small size, our commitment is to give you reports. And we collect different data sets, from the site assessment to the 14-year-old trees and to the social programs. So those are the data that reduce the leakages into the carbon and to make the carbon more effective. So we're endeavoring on that as we pursue how these legal governance and financing models are playing into the carbon.
Okay. Yeah, that's another really interesting point that I feel we need to make more, because certain people like to pick on carbon markets, whereas we all know that the rigor that goes into carbon finance in verifying and validating and looking at the data and saying what changes are happening and quantifying the impacts of human activity on a forest is really high in carbon accounting. And it's a lot higher than it is usually in philanthropy. And what you're saying is getting active in carbon accounting, at least, is going to help you to
The integrity of conservation.
Yeah. It's interesting. Another interesting thing, you guys, the value of mangroves. There's so many different ecosystem services, coastal protection, you mentioned, habitat. I know the model that they're using at the Carbon Project over in Gazi Bay. I can see how that can be replicated. And I'm wondering if your model is something that can only really apply in an urban setting or something like this, where the other benefits beyond carbon are so clear. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, replicability of the model.
Yeah.
One, about urban mangrove, the carbon standards. Let's start with the standards. You see, those standards, for you to start to get into the voluntary markets, you need to have some hectares. Okay,
yeah, you need a lot. You
need a lot
more.
I don't know, 10,000. I don't know how much. And that one has actually motivated the instant
experts. Yeah,
yeah, it has motivated them. But what Adopter Site does, we are not interested in those huge chunks of plants for restoration. If the size of this room, which you can adopt, is enough to facilitate sustainability into the ecosystem, then let's apply it. And tomorrow you'll come and you'll need another small size like that. And then cumulatively, we have very little sites and still bring the curve to the end. The issue is the process. So on its replicability, that can be applied in any ecosystem that has forest and urban people. because it involves assessing the forest and assessing the social economic part and then integrating it in between to ensure there is sustainability. Yeah, you're trying to ensure you're playing at 50-50.
Right. Can we flesh out the process again?
The process of adopt a site.
Yeah, and starting with the threats. You start out with a specific threat, something that's causing degradation, and then you go about trying to counteract that, right? That's the gist of what you're doing. Can you flesh that out? What is the process here? How do you first identify the human activities that are causing degradation? How do you then come up with a way of countering them? I understand how it all works in carbon finance, and here I don't understand how you go about quantifying the impact of human activities, identifying the human activities that are causing the problem, coming up with an action plan, implementing it, and then the finance, because that's where it's always the hard part. How do you get people to pay for this?
Basically, adopt a site. So what we do, just a brief history of the Chuda Creek. 80% of Chuda Creek was degraded. And that's when big ship came in with the idea of let's just plant some trees and then give them like some 10 years and then we cut them down, then we sell them for timber. But what they had seen behind their plan was not going to be sustainable, and it was just going to show a reflection of what the community is already doing. Chuda Creek has suffered a lot of degradation. So within the areas that are degraded, as I mentioned, we are doing collaboration with the community. And how we get our partners to pour out the money, if I can use that word, is we are not only just planting the tree. We have a monitoring process that we have 4 cycles of monitoring. We monitor after 3 months of planting the trees, 6 months, 9 months, and then after 1 year, and then we do 5 years of monitoring. So when we put out the adopt a site model, we don't just put and we tell you come plant a tree and then that's it. No, we want you to come and plant a tree and then come back after 10 years and point out this is the tree that I planted, let's say 15 years ago, and it is still standing, it is still having value to the community, because once that tree is fully grown to maturity, you can put a beehive there and still use it to get some financial support out of it. So when the idea of adopt a site is sold and someone who is very environmentally conscious and understands the value of planting that tree, not only to him but also to someone else, I think the finance will come.
The finance will come. That's what I keep telling myself about this show. I'm in season 9 now. I started Bionic Planet long before natural climate solutions were trendy, and I've continued as natural climate solutions and carbon finance have come under unjust attack. If you're still tuned in, I have a couple of questions for you. First, how are you enjoying the content? And second, what kind of people do you think are still listening? Do you think they're the kind of people you want to reach? Because if you represent an ethical business or an NGO seeking to connect with a global, environmentally conscious audience and align your brand with an effort to cut through the ideological nonsense that's making this stuff unnecessarily complicated, then reach out to me at steve@bionic-planet.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. That's steve@bionic-planet.com. If you're an individual enjoying the show and want to support the creation of more high-quality episodes for Season 9, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/bionicplanet. That's patreon.com/bionicplanet, Bionic Planet, no dots or dashes, all one word. Your support, starting at just $1 per episode with a monthly cap, helps us deliver top-notch content. So again, to become a sponsor, reach out to me at steve@bionic-planet.com. That's steve@bionic-planet.com. To become a patron, go to patreon.com/bionicplanet. I'm also recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit through my fiscal sponsorship with Manga Bay, so larger donations are tax deductible.
You talk about youths, and you're closer to being a youth. Are you finding that people in your generation are more aware of the value that mangroves have? Is that something that awareness is getting into the community? Or are you just like the exception?
Okay. Previously, the youths were not really aware. And with the efforts that Big Ship has put into place regarding creating awareness trying to ensure these youths are the same that are being engaged in the restoration activities. Then with time they get to aware, and now the attitude comes to change. And so for the period that Big Ship has been existing up to date, we can tell that there is that behavioral change in regards to conserving the ecosystem, and they are now actually championing towards the same.
What is the actual process? How do you spread awareness? You go to a school? What kind of stuff do you do?
We use different methodologies. For instance, during our restoration activities, we usually conduct awareness programs. We try to tell the people in the importance of conserving the ecosystem. And we also do outreaches to the schools. Currently, we are working with an Aga Khan Foundation, Aga Khan Academy, where we introduce the community service learning. By there, we are trying to create a generation that will understand and know the benefits of conserving the ecosystem. So even if we are not there, we have young people who are growing up and they know. And we also do it through public participation. We create awareness, try to engage the public, and the government also, we try to advise them, because you realize most people in the government, they really do not know about mangroves. So we try to also bring that idea into their senses so that all these efforts can be geared towards conserving the ecosystem. For the entrepreneurship training, one, we conduct trainings on nursery establishment. You realize it's a process of conservation, as well as community can tap in income from that. So that is one of the programs that we train them. And then the other program is training on beekeeping as an entrepreneurship program. And also we train communities on now the art of tour guiding, and where they can be able to take guests through the excursion, and with that they are able to get an income out of it. And we're also training communities on promoting their culture as an entrepreneurship aspect. They will be selling their culture, but at the end of it all, they will be getting an income. So I see that as an entrepreneurship opportunity as well.
Also, to add on that, because the mangrove ecosystem, we have said, is very crucial to the fisheries production, we try also as much as possible to inform them on like starting up crab farming. They can tap into maybe prawns farming, shrimp farming, and things like that. So the mangrove ecosystem it's broad. It offers a variety of opportunities that the community can use to benefit them financially. So right now, I can say we have done that, as my colleague has said, is train them on nursery establishment, train them on beekeeping. One of our community group is now focusing on crab farming. And also we have a few that are tapping into aquaculture. The mangrove ecosystem offers a lot of opportunities.
And what are the challenges you face in doing this? I mean, do you find that people are very willing to listen, or do you find there's skepticism, or do you find there's apathy?
Of course, what I can say, dealing with humanity is one thing. You have to understand people. You have to understand their way of thinking, and it's more of just getting to understand the behavioral aspect of people. And so you might try to create awareness to a certain community, and it's not buying your idea, but you do not lose hope, because you know your main end goal, you want to protect that ecosystem. So you keep on pushing and pushing until it comes into their senses and they get to realize they need to conserve. At some point you might reach out to a community and it's not responding, but when now you reach out to them and try to engage them in the activities, they get the impact of conserving as well as earning income from that. And now it changes their perspective, and they know this is an area where I can get an income while I'm conserving. So that is how we are doing it.
Maybe if I can just add on to what my colleague is saying, whenever we try to put what we are doing out there, we usually engage in community entry strategy. Our restoration efforts goes hand in hand with what Kenya Forest Service is doing. So they are mandated to protect the forest. So when we want to engage a particular community in restoration processes, we first of all put out an information to the Kenya Forest Service, and we identify specifically that community that we want to reach out to, so that when we go to that community, we go with the Kenya Forest Service, so that even when we deliver the message, they see that this is something also that is supported by the government. And we are not going to the community and telling them, if you cut this, this is the consequence. We are telling them that if you cut this ecosystem where you are living at, this will be the impact that you will feel at the end of the day. So once they see that, because most of the coastal community members are fishermen, and that is where they get their socio-economic benefit. And once you tell someone you are a fisherman, I believe you go to the ocean to do fishing, and the catch that you get, that is your daily income that you support your family. So when this forest is cleared, you will not be having any fish to go and catch. So what will you be doing? Do you have any other way you can support yourself? Yes, if you do not have any other way to support yourself, then you need to conserve this place so that your children are able to also benefit from what you are doing. Yeah, so I think that our community entry strategy is usually focusing on that, trying to show them the importance rather than tell them if you cut, you will be arrested or something.
As you could see, we are more largely on restoration, but much of our intervention is on the sustainability of the communities. And also we have an element of skills transfer, especially for youth. We have some gender biased interventions, especially to women, youth and PWDs. And that part is also a very important sustainability component. For example, if you just call a community meeting, by just eye view, you will be able to count the youths. There will be very few, if at all. But they are the change makers, the change agents. Yeah, because these skills we are talking about, the technology which people talk about, it is if you have emphasized on capacity building the young people, because they are the ones who are going to take charge of the ecosystem. Yeah, so that part also is a takeaway from the first session. And also another takeaway is the mentorship program, which is very evident from this setup. And that one is what we are cascading down to the youths and women who are the intended community targets to divert, to bring change. And those are some of our, I don't want to say the ingredients or the fuel of burning the oil for the ship to move.
Right,
yes,
right.
the sustainability. Yes, sustainability is in the emerging career of the team that we're having, and even the youths who are within the ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay. Where is your project area? I mean, is it all in the ocean, or is some of it in this area, or?
Yeah, adopter site approach looks at adjacent forest community. Mm-hmm. So our lens looks at the existence of a forest for adopter site to make sense. Yeah, because otherwise we'll be adopting buildings in Nairobi. Yeah, so because of that, we are very keen on different diverse, for example, in those investment components, Mombasa is very more on waste management. It has a lot of viability, as many other projects. In Kwale, in Diani, we are opening up, it's more viable for tourism. That's why you hear we have some tourism product. And in Tana River, is still very serene. And that's where we want to put some of the abundance beehives. Yes, we have some here in the urban, but you can imagine the ecosystem. Right. Yeah, so every region that we are planning to go, or we have already entered to, have some specialty which have been mapped for that purpose, especially when you're focusing on commerciality or viability of the investments in question.
Okay, being a youth who has undergone through the mangrove training for climate resilience as a Mikoko and level program at Big Ship, I may say this has been a very impactful program for me as a person, because it has been an additional skill apart from just the normal knowledge that I get from school. Then this is a practical knowledge, a practical skill that I get to acquire, and it's an added advantage to me as a person, because I'm building towards my career path, and some of the skills that I generate from here will be an added platform towards reaching or achieving my career. So I feel the program has been nice, and we are trying to ensure more youths are incorporated into this program to ensure we create voices who can speak out for the climate and speak out for environmental conservation as a whole. And I wish to promote our program that we are currently wanting to introduce it into the market. So we are working on an ecotourism program, and we are looking at sustainability of our activities, and ecotourism is one of the sustainability program. So currently we are introducing this Chuda Creek as a destination for tourism, and we would like to promote this program and ask or let people aware that there is a destination coming on, and bringing out very important products like mangrove mud walk, mangrove a guided tour where one is taken through the ecosystem, able to appreciate and learn, take some nice photos within the ecosystem, and And then also a boat riding experience where one is taken through the ecosystem, get to also do some bird watching, because you realize when you conserve, habitats are created and other wildlife also start to come in. So it will be an opportunity for people to also get to experience that. And also we are promoting culture. You realize this is a coastal setup and there's that culture that people have grown up with. And with time, with the peri-urban setup, you realize the culture is diminishing with introduction of tourism and everything. We want to bring that culture back to make people understand that this is the way of life of the coastal people. And so we are trying to promote that. Yes.
Do you consider yourself a coastal culture, or is your ancestry attached to the coast?
Not really.
No?
But when you go to a community, you do what Romans do. You get to adapt, try to learn the new cultures, and you realize they fit in very well, and there's an aspect of how they impact your life. So it's also good to try to learn other people's culture and appreciate what they do.
Lucienne Ariambo closing out this edition of Bionic Planet, which I recorded in Mombasa but edited here in Chicago. You can learn more about Big Ship at bigship.org. That's bigship, all one word, .org. And you can learn more about Bionic Planet at bionic-planet.com. Lucienne echoed my own sentiments exactly. I hope I'm helping you learn other people's cultures, and I hope you appreciate what I'm trying to do with Bionic Planet. If you're enjoying the show and want to see it grow with even better episodes, you can make a big difference. Simply give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcatcher and consider becoming a patron at patreon.com, patreon.com/Bionic Planet. Your support means the world to us. You can also become a sponsor of Bionic Planet by reaching out to me at steve@bionic-planet.com. I'm accepting sponsorships for individual episodes as well as verticals, but I'm really looking for organizations that believe in long-term alignment with someone who's trying to tell the true full story of climate and biodiversity finance. Because if we don't get the money right, we won't get anything right, and we can't let ideologues, outliers, and opportunists hijack the narrative. That address again is steve@bionic-planet.com. And sponsorships, by the way, are tax deductible. That wraps up today's show. Until next time, I'm Steve Zwick in Chicago. Thanks for listening.